TitleMatchNetwork.com.
Because of the reputation and the exposure I had just been getting in St. Louis. I was just starting to make a name for myself in St. Louis, and because of the relationship between Sam Wishnook and Vince Sr., he says, "Man, you're going to like this kid. Give him a break." So they brought me in there as the North American champion, and I'll be real honest. I think that Vince liked my work, but see, New York has always been the big guy, muscle territory, and I didn't have it. I was still. I always looked like an athlete, but I still looked like a young green kid. You can look at the pictures of me. I look at those pictures and I just kind of hide my head. I go, golly, So Vince realized, I really can't do with this kid what I'd like to do with him right now. Pat Patterson came in, and the one thing I admired about Vince is he didn't want to step on anybody else's deal, and he found out that Bill Watts's belt down there in Mid-South was the North American title. So he didn't want to have the same. He didn't want to change. So that's how it was changed. I always tease Pat Patterson because, he has gone down in history now as being the first Intercontinental champion. And actually I was, because the belt that Vince Sr. gave me or brought me in, he created that, he just created a story, brought me in as the North American champion. And we realized that there was another one. He says, well, when I dropped the North American belt to Pat Patterson, and then he supposedly they created another story where he goes off to some tournament and comes back the Intercontinental champion, and that's how the Intercontinental champion was born.
You're also wrestling Hogan, I think, for the first time when he made his debut on MSG.
Hogan's first match in the Garden was with me, and. I was in the at the TV taping when Vince Sr. first laid eyes on Hogan, and I almost saw the dollar signs in his eyes myself. But I knew right away. I said, "Man, they here was this great big massive guy, had the look, and we're going to make this guy." And I was just getting ready to leave. I'd been there about a year, and I was on my way, and I was going back to Mid-South. And so at the Garden, I went to Vince Sr., and I said, "Vince, I know you want to get this guy over." I said, "What would you like me to do?" And he paid me probably the greatest compliment that he could for a guy that had been in the business, 4 years. He said, "Ted," he says, I know you'll do it right. You do it any way you want to." I said, "Wow, it's okay." So I went to Terry, and I said, "I want to get you over big." And, he hadn't had too much experience at the time. And I said, "Here's what I'd like to do." And I said, "Man, I'm just going to, just trust me." And I said, "I'm going to fly for you." And we went out and had a great match, But there's a match I'd like to have for my own personal, library. Right. If I could ever, I think somebody.
Yeah, really? Yeah, it's black and white, but I think we might have a better copy of it.
But
we'll have to
I'd like to have that. But I got him over, and I'll never forget. He said, "Man," he says, "thank you very much." He said, "I owe you one." He said, "I owe you one." And he says, and I never forget a favor. So I left New York, and I went back to work for Bill Watts, and I kept going back there because that territory, from the time that I went there in '75, right through the '80s, was always good. Oh, yeah. It was one of the, it was a place that never really cooled off. It might drop a little bit, but it never bottomed out. And I went back to work for Bill, and that was in late '79, early '80, and that was about the time that my first wife and I divorced, and I stayed with Bill for a while, and this was about the time when Dory Jr., Terry, they called me, Harley Race called me, and they said, "Get to Atlanta and get on that TV." Bob Geigel called me. He said, "Get to Atlanta." and get the TV exposure. You are in line. We are pushing for you to be the next NWA champion.